After 9 years of sacrifice raising two children who weren't mine, they sat me down and told me I had to apologize to their real father for having replaced him. I didn't argue, I simply got up, gathered my things, and gave them exactly what they asked for. My name is David. I'm 40 years old. This is the story of how my life fell apart after giving everything for a family that wasn't mine. It all started 9 years ago. When I met Carolina in a coffee shop, I was a normal guy working as a supervisor in a factory, living in a small apartment. And I had a decent, though somewhat empty life. She, on the other hand, was a whirlwind, a single mother with two children, Alex 9 and Nora 6, and an ex-husband. Manuel, who abandoned them when Nora was a baby. Manuel would show up from time to time with empty promises, but never stayed. I don't know how it happened, but I fell in love with Carolina. She was strong, one of those people who face everything and still manage to smile. Her children didn't make it easy at first. Alex looked at me with suspicion, as if he expected me to disappear too. Nora was more open, but was afraid of getting attached. The first few months were strange, awkward dinners, walks where I felt like an outsider, but little by little things changed. I helped Alex with his homework, played with Nora in the park. One day Alexis said, "Thanks, David," with a look that touched my soul. Nora gave me a drawing of the four of us with the word family written in crooked letters. I carried that drawing in my wallet for years. I decided to give it all. I moved in with them a year later into a bigger house we rented. It wasn't luxurious, but it had a yard for the kids. I started working double shifts to pay for private school. Alex's soccer lessons, Nora's ballet classes, doctors, clothes, everything. I didn't complain. Seeing Alex score a goal on the team I coached, or Nora running to hug me after a recital, was worth every extra hour. We created routines, dinners together every night, weekends at the lake, short trips to the beach. Alex started calling me Dad after his first goal, and Nora followed suit. Soon after, those words made me feel like I had built something real. Carolina and I weren't perfect. We argued, but always away from the kids. She worked as a receptionist at a doctor's office and contributed what she could. Sometimes she'd talk about men not with affection, but with anger, saying he was never a real father, that he only showed up to show off and then left. I listened and promised I wouldn't be like him. And I kept that promise. For 9 years, I was the one who was there at parties, school meetings, games in the rain. I was their father, even though we didn't share blood. It wasn't all easy. When Alex hit his teens, he became rebellious. At 15, he once screamed at me, "You're not my real dad," during a fight about his grades. It hurt, but I let it go. He was a teenager finding his place. Nora at 12 became more reserved, always with her diary or her headphones. I tried to give them space, but I never stopped being there. The years passed, and our life seemed solid. We had a house full of laughter, memories, and routines. I felt proud. Everything changed one Friday when Alex was 18 and Nora was 15. Carolina came home with a strange look on her face and said, "Manuel wants to see the kids." I'm not formed in my stomach. We hadn't seen him in almost 10 years, and now he wanted to come back. I didn't know that was the beginning of the end. The next day, Manuel showed up in a sports car wearing an expensive suit and a rehearsed smile. He brought gifts: a new phone for Alex, expensive headphones for Nora. The kids, who barely remembered him, were impressed. He said he was a successful entrepreneur, that he'd made a fortune in real estate and wanted to make up for lost time. I didn't trust him. Carolina insisted on giving him a chance. "He's their father, David," she said, as if I hadn't been the one there all that time. Manuel started taking the kids to expensive restaurants, amusement parks, clothing stores. Alex couldn't stop talking about my dad. Nora, who used to tell me everything, only talked about how great Manuel was. I tried not to take it personally, but it hurt. Carolina was confused. Sometimes she defended men, saying he had changed. Other times, she told me not to worry, but she stopped planning our dinners, stopped talking about our future. She started spending more time testing, and I knew it was with him. Tension grew for weeks, kept going to work, coaching Alex's team, helping Nora with her projects, but everything felt wrong. Kids didn't look at me the same way anymore. One night at dinner, Alex said, "Dad says he wants us to come live with him for a while." Carolina said nothing, just looked down. I knew something was about to break. That weekend, Manuel invited us to his luxurious apartment downtown. I didn't want to go. Carolina insisted it's for the kids, she said. I went, though every step felt heavy. Manuel was in his element, pouring drinks, telling stories of his travels, showing pictures of a perfect life. Alex and Nora looked at him like he was an idol. I felt invisible. Then the worst happened. At dinner, Alex stood up and said, "David, we need to talk." Nora nodded and Carolina stayed silent, staring at her plate. "Alex and I think you've tried to replace our real father. You manipulated us into seeing you as something. We want you to apologize to Dad for taking his place." The silence was like a physical blow. I looked at Carolina, waiting for her to say something to defend the 9 years I gave them, but she didn't speak. Manuel had a small, almost triumphant smirk on his face. I didn't feel anger, just a cold calm. I didn't argue. I stood up and said, "Okay, I'll give you what you want." That night at home, I started planning. I wasn't going to beg. I had given everything. And if it wasn't enough, there was nothing more to be done, but I wouldn't leave quietly. I was going to make sure they understood what it meant to choose their real father. The first thing I did was review my finances. For years, I had set aside money for the kids, a college fund for Alex, another for Nora. It wasn't millions, but it totaled about $50,000 between the two. I also paid for subscriptions. Netflix, Spotify, soccer lessons, ballet, even the damn Wi-Fi in the house. Everything came out of my account. I took out my laptop and started canceling one by one. I cut off the automatic payments. I didn't feel guilt, just a clarity I hadn't had in weeks. If they wanted their real father could take care of it. Next, I went to the kids' rooms. The house was silent. Carolina had stayed at Manuel's apartment with them. Saying they needed family time, I went into Alex's room. His soccer clothes, the trophies we won together, the books I bought him to study, everything I had paid for was there. I did the same in Nora's room, her ballet slippers, the desk where she wrote, in her diaries, even the headphones I gave her for her last birthday. I started packing, not with anger but methodically. Everything I put in the boxes reminded me of a moment. The day Alex scored his first goal and hugged me. Nora asked me to teach her how to ride a bike, but those memories didn't matter anymore. They had made their choice. I spent all night putting together a file. I pulled out receipts, bank statements, invoices, calculated every cent I had spent over the last 9 years, $310,000. School, doctors, clothes, food trips, everything. I printed it, stapled it, and put it in a folder. I wasn't doing it to show off, to make it clear what I had given. At dawn, I loaded the boxes into my truck and drove to Manuel's apartment. When I arrived, I rang the doorbell. He opened it, still in his pajamas, with a look of surprise he couldn't hide. "What are you doing here, David?" he asked, as if he didn't know what was coming. I didn't answer, just pointed to the boxes in the hallway. "This is everything I bought for Alex and Nora. They're yours. Now." I handed him the folder. $310,000. That's what it cost to be their father these past years. You're the real father now. You take care of it. Man tried to say something, but I cut him off. There's nothing to talk about. This is what they wanted. I turned around and left in the car. I felt a mix of relief and emptiness. I had done what I had to do, but my chest still felt tight. The following days were a blur. Carolina called a couple of times, but I didn't answer. She sent me messages saying the kids were confused, that they didn't mean to hurt me. I didn't reply. I moved into a smaller apartment near the factory. It was a lifeless place, but I didn't need more. I spent my nights watching TV or drinking beer, trying not to think about them. But it was impossible. Every corner of my mind held a memory, Nora's laughter. Talks with Alex about soccer nights with Carolina, planning a future that no longer existed. At work, my colleagues noticed something was wrong. "You look like you've been hit by a train," David said. "Juan, my friend from the factory." I tried to smile, but I couldn't. I told him a little, just enough for him to understand what a bunch of crap. "Man," he said, "you gave everything and they turned their backs on you." I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. A month later, I heard from a mutual friend that the kids had gone to live with men. Well, Carolina too. They said he had promised them a better life, big house trips, everything I could never give them. I didn't feel jealousy, just a deep sadness. I had given my life for them, and now they were with a guy who didn't know what it meant to be there through the tough times. Weeks passed, and I started hearing rumors. Manuel wasn't the hero he seemed to be. Kids dropped their activities. Alex no longer played soccer, nor a quick ballet. Carolina had to get a second job because Manuel wasn't covering expenses as he promised. One night, I received a text from Alex. David was short. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing." I read it over and over, but I didn't reply. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive. One afternoon while grocery shopping, I saw Nora. She was with a friend, but she looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. She looked at me, and for a second, I thought she would approach, but she just lowered her head and kept walking. It hurt more than I expected. That night, I dreamed of the old days, family dinners, trips to the lake. I woke up with wet eyes. One day, Carolina called. Her voice sounded broken. "David, we need to talk." She said. I agreed, though I didn't want to. We met at a coffee shop, the same one where we first met. She was haggard with messy hair and red eyes. She told me everything. Manuel had abandoned them again. After a few months of promises, he left for another city, saying he had business to attend to. He left them with no money, with debts in an apartment they couldn't afford. Alex was working at a fast food joint to help out, and Nora barely left her room. Carolina cried as she spoke. David, we made a mistake. We didn't know what we had with you. I looked at her expecting to feel something, anger, pity, love. But I felt nothing live with your choices. I told her. I got up and walked away. I didn't look back. I started to rebuild my life. I met Vanessa, a teacher who worked at a school near my new apartment. She was kind, direct, and had no drama in her life. We started dating, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't tell her everything at first, but when I did, she listened without judgment. You did the right thing. She told me you can't force someone to value you. A year later, my life was different. Vanessa and I were planning to move in together. Work was going well. I even got a promotion. I had found a calm I didn't know I needed. Past doesn't get erased so easily. One afternoon, while grocery shopping, I saw Alex. He was alone pushing one half-empty cart. He looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't look away. David, he said in a low voice, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know. I'm sorry. We didn't know what we had until we lost it. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I just nodded. Take care of yourself. Alex, I said, and kept walking. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't hate either. It was accepting that sometimes love isn't enough, that you have to know when to let go that night. While having dinner with Vanessa, thought about everything that had happened. I had given 9 years of my life to a family that wasn't mine. And although they broke my heart, they also taught me something. Love is not servitude. It's knowing when to walk away to reclaim your freedom. I didn't know what would happen to Carolina, Alex, and Nora. Part of me still loved them. That part was no longer in charge. I had found peace, and I wasn't going to let it go. The following months were like learning to walk again. Vanessa was my anchor. She wasn't the type to fill silence with empty words. She knew how to listen. And when she spoke, she got straight to the... We moved in together to a bigger apartment with windows overlooking a park. It was a simple place, but we made it ours. We put up plants, hung photos from our short trips. And every night we cooked together, she taught me how to make a decent meatloaf. And I taught her how not to burn the fries. For the first time in a long time, I felt at home, not because the place was perfect, because I was with someone who truly saw me. Work was going well too. Promotion at the factory gave me a bit more financial breathing room. I started saving again, not for others, but for myself. I enrolled in a weekend woodworking course, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I built a table for our dining room. It was a little crooked, but Vanessa looked at it as if it were a masterpiece. It has character, she'd say, laughing. That laugh of hers reminded me that life could be light again. Past doesn't just disappear. One afternoon, while sending a chair in the workshop, I received a message from an unknown number. David, it's me, Nora. Can we talk? Please. My finger froze over the screen. Part of me wanted to delete the message and move on with my life. But another part, the one that still remembered her drawings and her laughter, made me reply. Tell me where and when we met in a park near my new apartment. Nora was different, taller with short hair and a look in her eyes that seemed to carry too much weight. She sat on a bench, fiddling with the sleeves of her sweatshirt. I don't know where to start, she said without looking at me. I just want you to know that I was wrong. We were all wrong. I stayed quiet, waiting. She continued, her voice trembling. She told me how Manuel had abandoned them again, just 6 months after they moved in with him. At first, it all seemed like a dream. Big house, the outings, the gifts. But soon the money ran out. Manuel started disappearing for days, then weeks. One day, he simply didn't come back. He left a note saying he had business problems and would be back soon. He never was. Carolina had to sell half their things to pay the rent, but it wasn't enough. They ended up in a small apartment with leaks and peeling paint. Alex worked long hours at a burger joint, and Nora helped by cleaning houses after school. Mom cries almost every night, she said, her eyes filling with tears. We didn't know what we had with you, David. We ruined everything. I wanted to say something. The words wouldn't come. I remembered the boxes I left at Manuel's apartment, the folder with the detailed $310,000. I remembered Alex's face when he asked me to apologize to his real father. I also remembered the good times. The soccer games, the nights reading stories to Nora, the times the three of us laughed until our stomachs hurt. Nora, I finally said what happened. Can't change it, and neither can you, but I'm not here to carry your mistakes. She nodded, wiping away her tears. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry and that I miss you. She gave me a quick hug as if afraid I'd reject her, and then she left. I stayed on the bench for a long time watching the kids play in the park. I felt a pang in my chest, but also a sense of clarity. It wasn't my responsibility to save them. A few weeks later, Carolina sought me out. She called from a new number, her voice exhausted. David, I don't know how we got here, she said. She told me she had discovered the truth about men. He was never a successful entrepreneur. He had scammed several people, including a friend who lent him money thinking I had legally adopted the kids and he could get something out of it. When he realized there was nothing to gain, he took off. Carolina was alone in debt with 2 children who barely spoke to her. "I need you," she said. "Kids need you." Her words hit me, but not like before. "Carolina, I gave everything I had. You chose men, well, and so did they. Now you have to live with that?" I hung up before she could reply. It wasn't out of cruelty. It was for survival. I couldn't go back to that place where I wore myself down for people who didn't value me. Time kept moving forward. Vanessa and I started talking about bigger plans, maybe a long trip, maybe our own business. She wanted to open a bookstore with a small cafe, and I imagined myself building the shelves. It was the first time in years. I was planning a future without feeling like I was carrying the weight of others. But the past always finds a way to sneak in one Sunday. While grocery shopping, I saw Alex. He was at the checkout wearing the greasy uniform from his job. He looked at me, and for a second, I thought he'd look away as he always did. But he left the counter, walked over and said, "David, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know what I had until you were gone." His voice broke. And I saw in his eyes the little boy who used to run and hug me after a game. I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to hug him to tell him everything would be okay. But another part knew it wasn't my place. "Alex," I said, "I hope you find your way." "I really do." I gave him a pat on the shoulder and kept walking. Vanessa, who was by my side, squeezed my hand. She said nothing, but she didn't need to that night over dinner. I told Vanessa everything, the meeting with Nora, call from Carolina, the words from Alex. She listened as always and then said, "You did what you had to do. David, you're not responsible for their choices. You deserve this peace." She was right. For the first time, I felt like my life was my own, not a sacrifice for others. A year later, my life was completely different. Vanessa and I opened the bookstore. It wasn't a big deal. It was ours. I still worked at the factory, but on weekends I helped out at the cafe, serving espressos and joking with the customers. I built more furniture, and though it wasn't perfect, each piece was a step forward. Sometimes news about Carolina and the kids would reach me. They were surviving, trying to rebuild. Alex had left the fast food job and was studying at a community college. Nora was in therapy trying to deal with everything they had been through. Carolina was working double shifts at a hospital. I didn't feel satisfaction in their suffering, but I didn't feel guilt either. They had made their choice, and so had I. Sometimes I look at the drawing Nora made, which I still keep in a box. I don't hang it up, not because it hurts, but because it's no longer part of my present. My present is Vanessa, the bookstore. The morning runs in the park. The nights laughing at silly things. I had learned that love isn't about giving until you're empty. It's about building something with someone who values you, who walks beside you, not behind you. As I write this, I'm in the bookstore with a coffee in my hand, and Vanessa is arranging books in the background. It's raining outside, but in here, everything is calm. I don't know if I'll ever speak to Alex or Nora again. I don't know if Carolina will find her way. What I do know is that I found mine, and that after everything is enough,